Hi everyone, welcome to Sacred Timings with Swati. In today's video, we will talk about the Pisces full moon and the Saturn dynamics that are giving flavor to this beautiful full moon. So, this week, the energy of Saturn has been quite strong through the transits that are taking place. And on Sunday, I really started to feel that energy of Saturn as a very dominant energy that was prevalent in the air. And on Sunday, August 27th, we had Saturn opposite the Sun, which is something like the full moon version of Saturn. And today we have the Pisces full moon, which is conjunct Saturn. And I also personally have Venus, retrograde Venus, on my natal Saturn. And so and I have my natal Venus in Pisces. So I've been feeling this Capricorn, Saturn energy, Pisces energy pretty strongly this week. And I actually wrote an article on the Saturn dynamics and I posted it on my blog the other day. But since then, that energy of Saturn just kept on increasing. So I thought I'll create a video on this. So let's get started and we'll talk about the different aspects that are giving flavor to this full moon. So I wanted to first start with the energy of Saturn and just to understand that better. So Saturn gets a bad rap. It has a bad reputation and is often associated with limitations, restrictions, constrictions, and that can really make us feel very heavy. And this heaviness is a part of its signature energy, although it is not meant to be experienced in a negative way. And oftentimes our first response to it will be to judge it and experience it in a very negative way. But Saturn teaches us how to grow within those limitations, and that's a really important part of its energy. To be able to understand that and master it is important to be able to utilize Saturn in our life. And how to step into our inner authority and to create a path through what seems like restrictions is another the highest essence of Saturn. In fact, it does. It's really needed to understand. I mean, we really need to understand Saturn energy and to utilize it effectively in order to have any kind of success in this physical life. So it does require us to cultivate discipline and have an ability to focus on what needs to get done, to be able to remove distractions. Working with Saturn does require determination and commitment to your process. It requires a lot of discipline. And the gift of Saturn is that when you work with its energy in a conscious way, you start to have that ability to create physical form, like to bring an idea into physical form and to create a path through what seems like obstacles. Now, what we often experience though is the shadow of Saturn. And if you're not aware of its purpose, it can easily show up as obstacles, like something is blocking a path. And remember, that is just that, we are required to grow within those obstacles, within that framework. And so we have to remove what is distracting us to be able to focus. But if we are not in touch with our inner authority, then this restriction can show up as an external figure preventing our growth. You may run into entanglements with authority figures. Saturn's energy can also show up as judgment of yourself and others. In fact, that's another very signature characteristic of Saturn, of the shadow of Saturn. Or you might feel like you're the receiving end of judgment from others. And always, this criticism and judgment, it can sting and it can prevent us from moving into new areas of expression, and it can prevent our growth from coming through because that judgment is kind of acting like that obstacle. It prevents you from exploring new things. And if that is happening a lot, then it can easily put us into a victim frame of mind, which is never an empowering place to be. So, this week, we may see the shadow of Saturn, particularly the shadow of Saturn in Pisces, increase quite a bit. And notice if this is coming up for you. For example, one of the shadow aspects of Pisces is feeling like a martyr, where you feel like you're constantly doing so much and you're giving, and you feel resentful because there is no acknowledgement or there's no reward for that. You might even feel guilty for taking time off for resting. And there is that dynamic between Saturn Capricorn energy versus the Pisces energy. The Pisces energy is more like a flowy, watery kind of energy, whereas Saturn is very much about sticking to your goals and doing, sticking to your to-do list and getting things done. And there could be a lot of judgment around just taking a pause and resting, and notice if that comes up for you. You may feel this internal or external pressure to keep up or to keep working hard, and then at the same time being told not to expect outcomes, not to expect the result that you want. So that attachment to outcomes also, having no attachment to outcomes, is another signature energy of both of these Pisces as well as Saturn. So again, here the it's important to remember the higher purpose of these transits and not to get caught up in the shadow, but to find a way to come out of it. And the higher purpose is to develop that sense of self mastery and to develop that inner authority, and also have that ability to go with the flow and to utilize the energy in the right way. And learning to direct your own energy and to be your own responsible for how you're using your life force energy is one of the highest gifts of these transits. So, in my course, The Gift of Your Authentic Voice, Saturn is one of the three key archetypes we work with. The other two are Chiron and Pluto. And all these three archetypes are really important, where the wound around our expression is concerned. So, in this course, The Gift of Your Authentic Voice, we transform that wound and around your expression into wisdom and strength. So now let's talk about Saturn in Pisces. And there are three aspects to Saturn's journey through Pisces that I feel are important to call out. The first is to develop the ability to dissolve limitations and to expand your possibilities. This is where, if Saturn's energy shows up in a very rigid way, you can utilize the watery energy of Pisces to dissolve that rigidity. You can utilize energy to um, soften the rules, taking a note of what are the rules that you have set up for your life, and can you change those rules, allowing you to open up to more possibilities. The second aspect of Saturn in Pisces is to bring structure to what can seem like an infinite number of possibilities, and that can be very overwhelming. In fact, sometimes we don't know what to do when we have a lot of choice. So, bringing form into a world of limitlessness so that you can actually apply it to your life, apply it to a real world issue, to your physical life, that is another key aspect of Saturn in Pisces. And finally, Saturn in Pisces brings us a reality check. What is true versus false? Because one of the shadow aspects of Pisces is this vagueness. Like we don't, we're kind of just aimlessly moving around. We don't know what is true or false. We're kind of in an illusion, sometimes in a delusion about what is possible. And Saturn brings us that capacity to discern what is the truth there, to see what has substance in the physical realm versus what is just an idea, what is just a great idea, but it doesn't actually have substance in the physical realm. And so this week's Pisces full moon may highlight all these areas for you in your own life. So, how do we transform the shadow of these energies into their essence? So, if you feel like the harshness of Saturn is showing up this week, then it may show up as internal or external structures that are preventing growth. It can show up as the inner critic or judgment, external authority figures, entanglements with authority. You can utilize the strength of the water energy of Pisces to dissolve that, really bringing in compassion and kindness. And for that, it may be important to do some emotional clearing. Already, I've been feeling the energy build up this week, and there is a sense of heaviness in the air, and that's not just because of Saturn, but also because of that emotional realm. The water energy is so emphasized this week, and so it's important to, one, cry if you need to, letting go of the old emotions, giving yourself space to feel your emotions and to surrender to that flow. Forgiveness is a great thing to do this week. It's really time to resolve old grudges and to move on, because that is where even if, like, if we are holding on to old stories and to the past, that is acting like a structure that prevents expansion in your life. So allowing time to resolve some of these old stories, this is a great week to do that. And really bringing in that compassion and kindness. It is kind of hard to feel compassion for yourself when you're carrying a lot of inner judgment. And so, first, that emotional clearing allows you to let go of the judgment, and then bringing in that compassion and kindness to yourself for yourself. Another way to work with the harshness of Saturn is through creativity, and that is just such a fun way to soften that harshness, that harsh energy. Now, the inner critic lives largely in the left brain because the left brain is trying to organize all the information. It's trying to come up with this to-do list. It works in a very linear way. It thinks it knows all the possibilities because it's trying to match them up to what has already occurred. And by bringing balance through the right brain creative activities that allow you to see a bigger picture, that can not only soften the inner critic, but it can also pull you out of focusing too much on the lower level details, because the left brain just loves to do that. It likes to break things down into the smallest step. But then by bringing in these creative activities, it activates that part of your brain that gives you access to a larger picture, and then it pulls you out of that minutia that can be so strong with the sun in Virgo these days. So if you feel like you are um, up for some creative activities to work with the energy of Saturn, check out my Amused workshop. I'm going to be talking about that in the next slide, which is a perfect way to work with this week's energies. And then, if you feel like you are freezing up because of the infinite possibilities, you can apply the structure of Saturn to bring form out of the formless. And what do I mean by that? Asking yourself, what is practical? What has substance in this realm? Like if you have a ton of creative ideas and you're trying to figure out which way to go, one way to look at it is, what's practical? What has substance? What is doable? What can you feel, touch, and hear? And let that guide you. And another way to work with, to bring in the Saturn energy, the higher essence of Saturn into these infinite possibilities, is that asking yourself, what is in integrity with your truth? Because Saturn is very much about being our inner authority, being in integrity with our own deepest soul self. So, asking yourself, what is in integrity with who you are? It doesn't matter who else is doing what outside. What do you want to do? What's in line with your truth? And what is sacred to you? That brings in the Sun in Virgo energy by really asking yourself, what are your priorities? What is sacred to you? And letting that guide your way through what can seem like an infinite maze of possibilities. All right. So here is an invitation to play, to transform the inner critic into the muse. And so if all what I've shared today has resonated with you, I invite you to Amuse. It's a fun, playful workshop where we uh, utilize intentional creativity processes to rewire the neural pathways to soften the critic and to strengthen your muse. And if you are noticing that the voice of the inner critic is very strong for you, then asking yourself, what would be possible for you if you consistently had a loving voice of discernment and truth rather than disapproval and judgment? And just imagine if your inner voice was like the best of Saturn and the best of Pisces energy, which is that inner authority, the voice of mastery, where you're coming from a place of mastery, and where you're coming, and mastery as in your inner authority is strong, like you are the master of your own life. And it's coming from a place of wisdom, but it is also a kind, loving voice. It is trusting, it has, you have trust in your inner guidance to navigate through the unknown, and your creative flow is strong where you're able to create your way through the future. And imagine if your voice was like that versus the shadow of Saturn and the shadow of Pisces, which can be a critical voice, this harshness that is coming out of criticism and judgment, and also the vagueness of the shadow Pisces, where there's no clarity and there's no purpose. And just tune into the difference between those two voices. And if you feel like you would like to participate in a fun, beautiful activity to transform this voice into the highest essence, I invite you to amuse. And here is the link, activateyourtruthandpower.com/amuse. All right. I also wanted to share that I am now opening up private coaching. Now that I've completed my intentional creativity teacher training, I have a little bit more bandwidth. And so I'm opening up private coaching again for my Power of Balance program, which is a 6-month program. And this, if you know that you're going through big transits and big change in your life, and oftentimes big transits equate big change, and if you want to step into a container which is going to hold you lovingly as you go through big transformation, then I invite you to a complimentary call to explore Power of Balance, and I've put the link down here. This program has one on one calls twice a month, sound healing twice a month, as well as one on one intentional creativity sessions, which can be a very powerful way to curate your future and to curate your highest self. There's also an extensive amount of materials that are pre recorded videos that I send to you every week, and you work through those. Those prompts and the exercises, and then we meet in our one on one calls to work through whatever is come up for you in that time. And I hold a very strong, loving container for this transformation to occur. So if this is something that you would like to explore, I invite you to this complimentary call to check it out. All right, I that brings us to the end of this video, and I wish you ease and joy as you walk into September. September is another very big energetic month with Venus turning direct, Mercury turning direct, the equinox, and so on, and all the usual full moons and new moons. And I've listed here a few ways that we can keep in touch. Thank you, and wishing you a beautiful full moon. Bye.